So this is just for having fun. Are you prepared?
I'm always prepared to have fun, Esteban.
Shall we start?
Yes, we shall start. Yep, that's good.
Transmedia, just a tea.
Okay, we are with the senior lecturer, Grace Poulter. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting me.
Could you present yourself, please?
Introduce myself,
Yeah.
That's what I do and so on. Okay, as Esteban said, my name is Grace Poulter. I'm a senior lecturer in academic writing at Glasgow Caledonian University. I've worked in the higher education sector for just over 20 years now, and before that I still worked in education. So all in all, I've been teaching this year for 40 years.
40 years teaching.
40, yeah. Well, I enjoy my job very much. I enjoy teaching academic writing. I don't so much enjoy writing myself. Now, people think that because I teach academic writing that I will be, that I'm happy to share my own writing with other people. But actually, it's a very sensitive subject for me because people automatically assume that everything I do will be held up by me for critique and that they can say whatever they like about it. So I often use academic writing and the writing of colleagues and so on in classes with students and ask them to critique it, but I hardly ever reveal my own writing to students as well. So I have the same kind of anxieties about revealing my writing that I recognise in students as well. So that's, over the years, my experience has not made me immune to criticism myself. And I understand very well how people react to and how people have anxieties about academic writing.
And in your classes, sometimes, do you use examples of writings that you have done before?
I used to do that, but because students feel, and anybody who is invited to critique something will often feel that a critique has to be negative, and they will look for the faults and overlook the good points in a piece of writing. So I no longer, that's one of the things I've learned in a long teaching career, is not to use my own texts because I would end up arguing with the classes, And, we would have fights about whether something was a good introduction or not. So what I do, I use colleagues' work, I use published material and so on. And sometimes I write texts, but I disguise them as somebody else's. I make them anonymous.
You come from Glasgow Caledonian University,
I do.
But we are not in Glasgow right now.
We're not in Glasgow right now. No, we are in Castellón.
In Castellón? And
yes.
What are you doing here?
I'm here at the invitation of the Department of Communication, Media Studies, Journalism and so on, which is a department that I'm extremely interested in. I'm interested in all communication and visual arts. And I'm here in order to deliver a series of workshops on academic writing and the writing particularly of research. And I am particularly interested in the research that PhD students do. So I like to think that although I teach writing in a number of different contexts, my real speciality and my real interest is in the writing of thesis, PhD thesis.
So we don't have the workshop are 2 days, 3 hours per day, but this is radio. We don't have so much time. And this is because we have a helper. It's called Lindsey, Carey. It's a senior lecturer in Glasgow Caledonian University. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting me as well.
Your face is like you are in tension, maybe?
You are relaxed? I'm very relaxed, yes.
Well, much better. Because you are going to help us right now. I'm going to deliver you. This is an article. Well, and you have homework, Grace, right now. You should analyze in less than 2 minutes the content, title, abstract, hypothesis, and findings of this article. While Grace is doing that, Grace is analyzing right now. Please, Lindsey, if you recognize the article, could you explain us its content?
Okay, so this is an article that I wrote with a colleague from University, Marie-Cécile Cervelon. And the paper was really about looking at consumer reviews, online consumer reviews, and the influence that they have on people's purchasing habits and whether they influence them in any way. And because the area that we both work in is ethical consumption, we looked at ethical reviews, so beauty products, organic beauty products, for example, which are very prominently sold online in the UK and in France. And we really looked at how influential the online critiques were related to these beauty products. So basically, that's the premise of the paper.
This is a very high quality paper. It has been published in a well recognized journal. It's international, French and Scottish researchers. So we are speaking about quality research, but maybe Grace, that is reading right now the article. Shall we start with the title? Could you read, Lindsey, again the title, please?
So the title of the paper is Sustainable, Hedonic and Efficient Interaction Effects Between Product Properties and Consumer Reviews on Post-Experience Responses.
What do you think about that title?
Okay, well,
the truth, please.
I'm just going to say straight up here, Esteban, if you did not warn me that I was going to be asked
because
to critique an article of a very dear and close colleague who is sitting right next to me now.
I've told you that this high quality article with findings has been published.
Yes.
But you use in your classes examples.
I do. But I read the examples beforehand and I decide whether they're good or bad examples of academic writing, and then I choose them appropriately. But I have looked through this, and in fact I have heard Lindsey discussing this project before, so I'm happy to tell you what I think of what's been written here if you'd like me to do that. I think the title, it's a long title, first of all, and it's a title for people who understand this particular discipline and this particular area of research. Because
Lindsey, your mic is open.
Yes, no, what I was going to say is that it's a very... usually we write a lot of qualitative papers, but this is a quantitative paper. So actually the genre is a little bit away of what we usually write. And I think when you're writing, and Grace can correct me if I'm wrong.
I'm sure you won't be wrong.
But the style that you use for quantitative papers is quite different to the style you use for qualitative papers. And in actual fact, my style is very different in terms of usually when I write in this way. So this is much more, as I would think, as I would name it, descriptive in terms of the quantitative aspect of it.
Yeah, so it has a focus on the methodology.
On the methodology,
yeah. And I can see that. And that is a factor of quantitative projects, that the methodology is more significant often than the results and the discussion itself, because one of the most important things when writing a methodology in any kind of article, so for a qualitative, a quantitative or a mixed methods approach towards the research, is that you describe the methodology in such a way that if it were to be repeated by somebody else, they would be able to test your findings by achieving the same kind of results that you have done. So I can understand exactly where Lindsey is coming from when she says that a lot of it is descriptive rather than discursive, perhaps, involved in a discussion. However, I would still say that the title, because of the very specialist words, hedonic is a word that we would hardly ever use in conversational English or even informal English. It's a very specialist word. Yeah. So I don't think that it puts a strain upon the reader, and I think that it would interest a particular group of people.
Maybe
it would have an attraction.
This is one of the reasons that I've chosen.
Because it has these very specialist words.
But also related to online reviews, hedonic is something that is used in that context because a lot of consumers get hedonic gratification from online relationships. So that's why it's used in that context.
One moment. If the listeners want to join in this exercise, the link of the article is in the description of the podcast and as well in the blog comtransmedia.com.
Okay, so I think Lindsey has given a very good explanation there of why you would use a very specialist keyword in order to showcase your article online and in order to increase the number of specialist hits that you would have upon a particular piece that's been published. I think although I've heard Lindsey discuss the project before just briefly, and I've only had a few minutes to read through the project, Esteban, I do think it's a really good project because I think the number of participants is of the order that brings something different to this kind of what I would look at in terms of cosmetic testing of particular products and so on, because they're often seen, cosmetic products, beauty products, although very significant and very important to many, many women, most women, I would say, they're often treated in a very trivial way. You know, that is seen as being, that they're seen as being non-scientific, that they're seen as being emotional responses to a product rather than being something that can be quite scientific and quite deep-seated psychologically in the way in which people respond. So I think the scientific approach and the way in which this has been written scientifically is very appropriate.
And the topic area is also kind of a little bit cutting edge in terms of, as Grace says, the cosmetic industry is a huge industry. And it brings in a lot of money, and often, people make references to organic or fair trade products, and actually consumers don't actually know what that means. And this is one way of highlighting how important it is, related to online reviews, what these products, the use that they have and how consumers use them and believe in them or not, as the case may be.
We're analyzing in 3 minutes just an abstract with a lot of information, maybe because the abstract has some virtues. What do you think is important to take into account in order to write an abstract of a research? Because this has a purpose, then design the methodology, and findings. This is a good structure?
Yes, I think.
Purpose, methodology, and findings?
Yep. I'm focusing particularly upon the findings section now, which I think is very well written because I like the sentence construction. As a person who looks often at the structure of the composition of sentences and paragraphs and so on in communicating ideas quickly and appropriately, I like the sentence construction here because it's well ordered and the sentences are short. So therefore they do not place a strain upon the reader. The most important thing, I believe, in communicating your research, especially through well-respected journals, is that people should enjoy reading what is quite complex research. Now, often people think that they can take a simple concept and make it academic by presenting it in a very complicated way. But real academic study focuses upon a very complex issue, as this one does, and tries to examine and explain that issue in language that is as straightforward and simple as possible so that the reader can get the gist and matter and material of the project, but with very little strain upon them as readers. So I like the findings section very much.
Now, from people from abroad, Great Britain, we have Italian, French, Spanish, a lot of problems to publish in English and American journals.
Yes.
Because you detect very quickly that is not writing in proper English. Mm-hmm. Please, the 3 most common mistakes for detecting that people from abroad make in their articles.
Okay,
3.
I can answer that because I talk about this quite a lot. The first one is in sentence construction, because in academic English, and in fact in English generally, we like the structure subject, verb, object. I have dealt in the past with lots of German academics and lots of very, very good English speakers in German, but often when they write, they ignore the subject, verb, object I say that talking about my German students because I'm in Spain, but everybody can take clues from this.
This is listened all around the world.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And often when German researchers and German students write, they ignore the subject, verb, object construction of English sentences, and they go subject, object, verb. And although reviewers are frequently not English language specialists, because they recognise something that they don't like, that they don't analyse it in terms of the sentence construction, they analyse it in terms of the content. And they think, because this is not what I'm used to reading, the content is somehow not what it should be. So that's tip number 1, is sentence construction. Number 2 is sentences that are too long. So I always say to my students, use a 3-line guideline. When you get to the 3rd line of an A4 sheet, font size 12, in an academic font, when you get to the 3rd line, ask yourself, should this be a new sentence? And usually the answer is yes. Okay, so we have this subject, verb, object, we have the 3-line guideline, and then we have the problem of uneven paragraphs. So academic text likes fairly well-ordered, even paragraphs. It does not like a 1-sentence paragraph and then a 19-sentence paragraph, then a 3-sentence paragraph, and so on. And often when I look at PhD thesis, I look at them visually first to see, I scan through maybe 13, 14, 15 pages to see what the paragraph structure is like. And then that gives me an idea of how this person is thinking and how they're writing a discussion and so on. Now, obviously, these are conventions rather than rules of academic writing, but we know how academics write because we read a lot of what academics write. And when academic, especially reviewers for journals, are reading international researchers writing, these are the things that often set off alarm bells in their heads, sometimes wrongly, because they overlook very good projects because they're not presented in ways that they are used to reading.
Senior lecturer Grace Poulter, you are a reference in your university in Glasgow Caledonian in academic writing.
Yes.
But maybe in the past you need some mentors, guides, people that have been a reference for you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I have. In fact, in the workshop that I'm delivering this afternoon, I'll be talking about the kind of people that I learned academic writing from. They're not always academic writers, so I very much enjoy reading people who write about writing. And one of my favourite authors in writing about writing is Stephen King. The American writer. He writes very, very well, and he has a lot to say about how to convince readers of the truth of what you're saying. And much of what I said there about sentence construction, paragraph construction, and so on, you can find in Stephen King's writing, even though he's a fictional writer rather than an academic writer. But there are a number of very, very good books that international students and international researchers can use to give them insight into publishing in academic journals in the United States and the United Kingdom. And 2 authors that I would recommend, one would be for the United States is a woman called Wendy Belcher, who has written a very good book called How to Publish Your Article in 12 Weeks. And it's a course for academics, for researchers. And I have the references and so on, and I have screenshots of the book.
You will have the reference in the description of the podcast?
Yeah. I'll give you the reference and I'll give you a screenshot and so on if you wish. And we have a very, very good Scottish lecturer. She's now Vice Principal at the University of the West of Scotland, a woman called Rowena Murray, Professor Rowena Murray, who learned her did her apprenticeship, if you like, in academic writing at Penn State University in the United States, and she delivers very, very good workshops, very effective workshops on how to be an academic writer, and I can reference her texts as well to you.
A film.
Pulp Fiction.
Pulp Fiction.
Pulp
Why?
Fiction every time because
Very violent film.
Yes, but it has. I think there are lots of lessons in life in Pulp Fiction. I like Quentin Tarantino very much.
Can
I
die.
like his
You can
approach.
die in
You can
life, no?
die.
You can
Yes,
die in life.
yes. But you can turn bad things into good things and so on. I also I'm very interested in films. I'm very interested in the theatre. But Pulp Fiction is a film that I always go back to because I like the way in which it's shot. I like the scenarios that are there. I also very much like John Travolta.
I remember that I was maybe 14 or something like that, and it was really shocking. This film,
Yes.
really shocking in the cinema.
Yeah.
People ask me, "Do you like it?" I don't know. Do you? I don't know. It
Yeah.
was just for weeks shocking
Yeah.
experience.
Pulp Fiction is something that makes you think about the way the world works, the way other people are, the way scenarios can turn out in very different ways, and it's extremely creative and has many memorable images.
And maybe have you experienced that kind of violence? We are speaking about 1973, Spain, Madrid. You were in maybe up in the stairs.
You want me to tell my story of 1973 when I was very young, obviously. I was in Madrid. I had...
Franco is alive.
Franco was very much alive, yes. Alive, very alive.
Not very well in that time.
but
alive.
And there were lots of things going on in Spain that were, were quite difficult and that I didn't really understand when I was younger then. So I was walking through Madrid and I only had British money. So at that time, there were no holes in the wall to get money, no cards, nothing. So I thought, okay, I need to...
Last century.
Yes, it was
Yeah.
the last century,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah, very long time ago. So I thought, I need to find a bank. So in Scotland, my bank was called the Bank of Scotland. So in Madrid, I saw a big bank, the Bank of Spain, the National Bank of Spain. So I thought, this is a place to change money from British pounds to Spanish
Pesetas.
Yes, pesetas. So I walked up the stairs, and when I got to the second flight of the stairs, I was surrounded by 6 very tall, armed people wearing
Guardia Civil, maybe?
Guardia Civil, yes,
Maybe.
wearing
Alto a la Guardia Civil.
Yeah, the very shiny hats on their heads.
Tricornio,
yes.
called tricornio.
Yeah, with the moustaches.
Proper moustache in
And
the
they're
70s.
very big guns. Yeah. So I was surrounded by these people and had no idea why this happened. But they took my passport. They asked me questions which I didn't understand. They wanted to contact the British Embassy. I had a very big rucksack on my back, so maybe they thought I was a terrorist. I don't know. But in the end, they let me go. So... yeah, that was one of my very early experiences of Spain.
Your Tarantino experience.
My Tarantino experience.
In Madrid.
I had not connected the two things together, but now probably that's why Pulp Fiction is one of my favourite films, because I felt that I escaped that kind of fate.
Senior lecturer Lindsey Carey, thank you. It has been a pleasure. Senior lecturer Grace Poulter, it has been very funny and a pleasure to have here.
Thank you very much, Esteban. It's been a pleasure for us.
Transmedia, just a tea.